and welcome back to the Reading Light podcast. I'm your host, Haley. I hope everyone's doing okay. Welcome in. I hope you're having a nice July. It's July as I'm recording this, so I guess I hope you're having a nice July afternoon, but this will come out in August, so I hope you're also having a nice August afternoon. I hope it's not as warm as it is right now. Currently, as I'm recording this, we have some heat advisory thingy. What is it? Oh, the corn is sweating or something. It's something from the corn plants in the Midwest, I guess, when they peak or something, or as part of their process of growing or something. They sweat, and then that creates humidity in the air, and now we all are hot. It's hot as hell. So hopefully that's not happening to you, but it's okay. It'll be fine. It's only a couple days. It happens, and I guess that'll also lead me into, if you hear the AC going off, that's why. That is why the AC is going off, and I'm so sorry if you just heard me rub my sweatpants. I just did that subconsciously, so... but other than that, I hope everything's going okay. I'm sorry if I'm a little rusty here. My recording schedule's been a little funky, and so I feel a little out of shape or not really with it totally, but I have my little script here. I got my thoughts, got my ideas, and I guess we'll kind of dive into it. I don't really have much else on anything. I think I butchered my intro, actually, now that I think about it. I think I usually say, welcome to the podcast, shining a light on book topics and discussions. Yeah, I typically do. Wow, I did mess that up. So, you know what? That's a testament to how rusty I am right now, and I will try to remember that for the next episode. Dang, I'm like 10 episodes in or something, or 9 or maybe something. This is not my first rodeo, although I haven't been doing this for the longest time. I was usually the one behind like a podcast. I worked as a producer before, so it is a little intimidating to be in front of it. It's not crazy, but it's a little intimidating sometimes, so I'm still getting a feel for it. I'm also pretty tired today. I did not sleep very well last night, so I'm running on a Red Bull, which brings me, I guess, to my beverage that I'm drinking for this episode. I just have a bottle of water because I just finished the Red Bull and now the taste is lingering. I don't know if that happens to anyone else, but does Red Bulls, well, I have the sugar-free one specifically, but does it dry out anyone else's mouth? I just feel like my mouth gets so dry with it. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Let me know if you also experience the same thing. So other than that, though, yeah, I got my little bottle of water here, and I guess we'll kind of dive in. Today we will be talking about Libby and Hoopla, which are two of the most common, I'm not sure if there's other one out there, but I know these are the most popular ways to borrow materials digitally from your library. And I kind of wanted to do this little episode on the differences, the pros, the cons, what, all that sort of thing. But I wanted to really kind of dive into this because I had felt I'd been seeing on TikTok, well, I guess I should say all social media, but I've seen it prevalently on TikTok, of people who kind of seem to don't know about these, and they talk about how expensive buying books are, or how they even pirate books and everything. So I don't know if people are just not aware that these services exist, or maybe they deliberately don't do it or something. But I wanted to kind of maybe have this episode as maybe a guide. This might not be the most in-depth. I've tried to make it pretty in-depth, but a lot of this is just stuff that I've noticed when using the apps. I've used these aspects, and I use both these apps regularly. I'm constantly borrowing books, audiobooks. We'll go through everything that's available, but I'm constantly using these apps. So this is kind of stuff that I've noticed. This is kind of an overview, the background, the features, and then pros and cons, and that sort of thing. So then you can, and also accessibility features. So sorry, I just saw that on my script and Also accessibility feature, so you can kind of make a decision for which one maybe you want to use more, or what. I think you should definitely utilize both of them in tandem because they do bring such different things sometimes to the table. And I mean, if you have a library card, why wouldn't you? This is like free materials and stuff, so I think it's really good. And it is just more than books, like any library. So there's always more than books. So I just wanted to kind of go over that. Kind of we'll dive into that. Try to hopefully this helps someone something. This is also me trying to use my library degree in some capacity. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're going today, and I do hope this is informative and that, you know, this maybe gets someone to try it out at least and maybe use it, or just know they have like a different option out there. Like, you don't have to buy books, you don't have to pirate them. And I was really honestly super inspired to finally make this episode because I saw one TikTok of a girl being like, book talk's gonna be the reason libraries die, which I think is probably really a drastic sort of thing. And I think there's a ton of different factors that fall into what is happening with libraries, especially politically and all that. However, I do think there's some truth in some of that, of like, you love books so much, but you're not using, I feel like, your library to like the full potential possibly. And I also do want to start with also another like kind of disclaimer about this is great to use, but I don't want you to be solely reliant on these electronic resources like this. I think there is so much value still in going into your library and getting books. So always make sure that you do try, if you are able to read like physical books and stuff like you can do that, and you're not reliant on an e-reader for any whatnot. So go into your library, try to use the books, materials, everything that's there. But also, I wouldn't replace this, I wouldn't totally replace buying this for buying books or anything like that. Like, I guess what I'm trying to say is it's okay to still buy books. And I do definitely recommend that, especially if you are someone who mainly buys from local bookstores. I think that is very important. I think it is still good to buy books. Buy what you can afford, what you have space for. Of course, don't break the bank, but you don't have to get these books. You don't have to buy them to read them. Like, there's other ways to read books that are legal and good. So, of course, buy books if you can, if you want to, but there's no need to be totally reliant on that in, I think, many situations. So now that's not to say, of course, these apps that I will cover with, they do have their, cons, which we'll go over, as I think I mentioned, with the pros and cons and stuff. And that's okay too. And it's all about finding what works for you. But like I said, at the very least, I want people to be aware that this is out there. They can use this, and this stuff is helpful. So let's just dive right in then. I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of the apps, and before I do that, there is another little disclaimer I want to say is all the information and experiences that I'm sharing about these apps comes from me using it through the Digital Library of Illinois. So basically in Illinois, there, when you are into like ebooks and stuff for your library and stuff, you're all kind of under the Digital Library of Illinois. So basically everyone in the state has access to the same thing. It's less of like a tiny kind of separation. I think Hoopla may be a little bit more specific to your library in certain ways with how it just operates and stuff. So that one may be a little bit more specific, but in general, this is my experience as someone who lives in Illinois. So just want to get that out of the way. If you do not, if your experience or anything, it may be different, whatnot. So anyways, kind of as another, let's go into like the overview now then. Both apps are apps that allow library users to digitally borrow various pieces of materials such as ebooks, audiobooks, comic books, magazines, movies, TV shows. Yes, there is like TV shows, movies, albums. You can rent off this to, not even rent, borrow. Because you're not really paying anything. So not to rent, but to borrow. And that's pretty nice. That's pretty cool, I think. There is some differences in how they do work. So Hoopla lets libraries pay to access as people borrow. So as you'll see when we get into this, there is essentially no waitlist on Hoopla, and that is because the title hasn't really been purchased per se. It's sitting there, it's available to be borrowed, but it's like a pay-by-pay person kind of situation. So I think that is what contributes to the no waitlist sort of thing. It's just once you decide you want to borrow that, your library then subsequently like purchases it in a way for you to have it and such. However, Libby is more of a traditional way of borrowing books. It mimics going to the library and trying to get a book and putting on the wait list and so forth. So both are accessible as apps and websites. They function pretty much the same on both. This is really nice. You can kind of sync it up, so you don't need like a cell phone or even a Kindle to use either of these apps. In fact, one of them you can't really use your e-reader on. We'll get more into that too. But you can just go to the web browser, you can use your phone, you can use your tablet, you can access these multiple different ways, and they do kind of sync across platforms. It's a little wonky sometimes with the syncing, but it is available as an option. Selection can very much vary. If you can't find one title on one place, you may be able to find it on the other. So I do think that's also important then to kind of not only pit these two against each other, but cover both of them. Because literally my go-to is if I can't find it on one, I'm going to go to the other. And if I can't find it on either one, well, then it's maybe go to my library, or maybe that is an instance where I would purchase it in some capacity. But these are two apps I feel that I can hop back and forth in between. And typically, I would say 95% of the time, I always find it in some way, shape, or form. So these are cross-platform, so your library and such can follow you. I think I mentioned that you can use them, whatnot, back and forth. And of course, the big one is a big feature of this is you need a library card to use them. So whether that's through a local one, whether that's through, I know there's some libraries that'll just give them out to anyone, I think nationally. That was kind of I think that was like a hack people were doing, at least back in maybe like 2020, 2021, where to have more holds, I think, was kind of the thing. Because you're restricted on how many holds you get on Libby. And I think it goes on your library card in general, but I could be wrong about that one. I'm not sure on the total logistics of that, but yeah, you can just kind of get library cards kind of from anywhere, it seems, or at least bigger ones or whatnot. You might just do more research into that if you are unable to get a library card in your area, but you can. You need it either way. So I guess that is a big feature of this. I don't know if I made that clear when I was talking about these being like borrowing apps, but you do need a library card. So let's start with Libby. We are going to start specifically when we cover the feature. So this is just, we're going to cover the features of each of one and kind of the categories that they cover. That's the word I'm looking for. What categories are there? So features of Libby, it is a lot of ebooks. I would say ebooks is definitely their biggest thing they promote. And I would say second popular would be audiobooks. So those are two, you're going to feel like it's kind of that more traditional books, ebooks, or I guess ebooks and audiobooks. That's their big thing. They have started, I've noticed, really kind of promoting magazines, new and old copies. So one feature, at least it was just promoted to me, and I hope I'm getting this feature right because I don't use it a ton, but they've been kind of pushing this feature to me about you can subscribe to magazines essentially. So if you love National Geographic, you can add that kind of to your subscription, and when it's a new issue is available, it'll let you know and you can read it on there. So that's kind of cool, and you can go through and they've got a ton of different categories. It really feels like browsing the magazine section at Barnes & Noble. If you've ever gone to that and you just see the rows and rows and rows of magazine, that is kind of what it kind of mimics. So it is very cool. I don't use it a ton. Like I said, I just kind of started become like aware of it, but I think that is a really cool kind of feature, and it's kind of easy to read. It might be better on a tablet. I was using it on a phone. It's a little clunky on the phone, so it might be better on the tablet. But So there's magazines, and then there is some comic books, graphic novels, manga. It is a little selective, and it is a lot more like popular titles, I would argue, but there are some. There are some on there, and some I think can be sent to Kindle. That I don't know how that looks, how that works. I've never done that on Libby. If I do borrow a graphic novel or whatnot from Libby, I use it on my phone. But I do believe there are some that can be sent to Kindle, and that may look better if you have one of those colorful Kindles, which I think they still make. Did at some point, but speaking of that, though, Libby does let you send your ebooks to the Kindle. So this is a very popular thing, I think, and I think that's what makes Libby a little bit more popular than the other app, Hoopla, that I'll talk about. And that's because you can read it on the app. You can read it download an EPUB version, I believe, and then you can send it to your Kindle too. That's the EPUB version kind of thing. Or I think you can even sometimes save it as a PDF and read it almost, or send it to it in a PDF format. Don't quote me on that though, because when I borrow a book, I go in such it's just a routine. I'm just mindlessly, I know what buttons to click to get it to my Kindle. And so I just kind of black out. But big thing, you can send it there. Or you can read on the app or whatnot. So that's, I love that feature. I do like that a lot. And, but yeah, borrow books, such, it puts holds, I believe, on your cards specifically. As I said before, I'm not too sure on the super duper logistics on it, but I believe it puts it right on your card. Your library card number does pop up and stuff, and it shows what's assigned to your card. So, and there can be a monthly borrowing limit. I think it can vary. I'm a little obscure on how that kind of works. It was a little confusing when I was trying to look more into the monthly borrowing limits vary. Hoopla does very much lay it out for you. But I believe it might be library to library. But just know that there may be a limit imposed. I think it might be 10 or 15 books a month. If that is what you're doing, bless you. I think I've only ever ran into a limit once on a different app, but yeah, so there's kind of a basic overview of Libby. That's kind of what's available, how it kind of works, the idea. Then there is Hoopla. That is the second platform I will be speaking about. And they they feel like the Wild West of content sometimes. They seem like there is no limit to what will be put on Hoopla, and it's definitely a place for, I would say, almost obscure titles, but then also really super popular titles. There will be super popular books that I'm amazed I can just borrow off Hoopla, and I'll look at Libby and it'll be 6 months wait, and then it's instant on there. So it's very funny, and that's why I always say check both. If your library has access to both, I think less libraries maybe use Hoopla or whatnot. I'm not 100% sure on that, but you might not have accessibility to both, and if that's the case, I'm so sorry, and I hope you are able to get accessibility to both, because it is kind of a lifesaver. But anyways, the features of Hoopla, they have some pretty big categories, and all is kind of laid out for you in the app when you go in there and stuff. It's all kind of really listed out, and they don't shy away from kind of what's available. I don't feel that they really push the popular stuff or the new releases as much as perhaps Libby does. They do kind of just show you, they're this is it, this is here's what's popular, kind of, but then it's also but then there's this too, so it does feel a little funny when you're looking into it. But they're big categories that they offer in terms of materials is ebooks, audiobooks, movies, seasons of TV shows, albums, and comic books, along with such as graphic novels and manga. I should incorporate that when I say comic books, so those various types too. But it's really a lot, and it does feel like I walk into a library more and I'm just presented with all these materials. So the how to access on Hoopla. It is accessible on apps, on the app on your phone or on your computer desktop. However, there is no ability to send to the Kindle. With this also, you are limited to 10 borrows a month, and it does tell you pretty straight up when you are borrowing in your little My Borrowing section. It'll tell you, you got this many titles for this month or this many for this month. I have ran into a limit on it once, and that was when I was in such a big comic book kick that I was just flying through comic book. I think I was reading the Hawkeye, really popular series. I can't remember what that is. I gotta look it up now. Hawkeye comics. It's like that really popular one. That sounds crazy. The one where it introduces Kate Bishop and all that. The one, I believe it's the one by Matt Fraction, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's this one. The one by Matt Fraction. I was reading, I guess, all this to say, I was reading this one, and but I was reading it as volumes. I don't think on Hoopla I could just read the whole thing. The whole thing's like 500 pages or something. I don't think I could like read the whole thing. I had to buy via volumes, and so I was going through reading all those, and I hit my limit on Hoopla. So thanks, man. Thanks for that one. But yeah, so that's kind of what happens on Hoopla. As I said, 10 titles a month. And yeah, so those are the main features of those apps. And kind of as I'm talking about that, you can kind of already start to sniff out pros and cons of them. I'll dive more into that coming up here now, but you can already kind of see, I think you've maybe decided for yourself, like, because especially if like you are such a Kindle user, you might be more drawn to Libby. But let's go through the pros and cons that I was able to think of. If there are other ones, anything that should be like included, I forgot about, of course, comment, let me know, email or whatnot, and I can always add like a little note or something in the description or whatever, and we can try to make this a more cohesive, convoluted, kind of bigger list if I did miss something. But I hope not. These are just, though, the pros and cons that I was able to spot out as I went through the apps and was thinking about them and as I use them and such. So some pros of Libby. I think something that's kind of pretty specific is it has a very good tagging system. So you are able to save titles and group them for later. For example, I have lists of like groups of romance books that I want to read. So I tag it under romance. I will also tag like true crime books I want to read, and that'll be titled under true crime. Or perhaps there's any YA books I'm interested in that I find when I'm scrolling, or if I get a recommendation online or something like that, I'll go in and you can tag and add it to one of your groups. You can create a whole new group. This was also pretty useful for me when I was going through my 2 classes for my library degree about library materials for children, and then my library materials for young adults. I was able to, at the beginning of the semester, grab the reading list and just compile it all, and I could see like where stuff was available and everything, and I can group it there, and I have now a list of it, so in case if I need that in a future profession or whatnot, I can just go and look and say like, oh, we read this book and I thought that was pretty good, so maybe we should incorporate that here, there, whatnot. So it is really cool. You're allowed to kind of create your own little TBR on there, and you can see right away like if the book's available, if it's even like if there's a wait, if it's no longer available at all at your library. I've had that happen where my library has just lost the rights to it, and so I just had to like remove it and whatnot. So it's kind of nice to not only list like out what you want to read, but then see when can you and whatnot. So I really like that. I do like the magazine subscription concept. As I mentioned before, I like that idea of borrowing magazines, looking through magazines. I do kind of not love the switch to digital magazines kind of thing. I do think there's still value in print stuff. I understand, though, the world is shifting and whatnot, but I don't love that aspect. But I do like that people maybe are then reading magazines and finding magazines to read. I think that is, that's maybe not something people always come across, or if you do, it's just for like 2 minutes at the grocery store or whatever. But I do like that, and I think that's pretty cool. And that operates kind of like a library. You can definitely go in, and libraries have special subscriptions. I would like to see maybe even a newspaper subscription aspect to Libby, perhaps, because libraries also do that too. You can get your newspapers, recent newspapers from there and stuff to read and whatnot. So I like that. There's also a pretty cool timeline feature on the Libby app that shows you your history of like borrowing habits. It'll show you when you first put a book in you tagged it as like to be read. It'll show you if you borrowed a snippet. And then it'll show you when you finally decided to borrow it and when you finished it. And I don't think it gets super specific as like you read 50% of the way on here or whatnot. It'll just tell you kind of when you started and finished it. Any major milestones in the borrowing process. But I kind of like that. I like that you can keep track of that. I think that is pretty cool. I like that a lot. And I guess my major pro of Libby is the fact you can send it to your Kindle. I don't know if you can send it to any other reading device. Someone would maybe have to investigate further. I don't think I could find it when I was exploring. But I know for a fact you can send it to your Kindle, I think, because it is kind of more hooked up to Amazon in that way. But I am curious to know if you have a Nook or another type of e-reader device, are you able to just swap it all around like that and send it to those devices? Please let me know. I'm really only familiar with Kindle, so I do apologize on that. But I like that. That is a pro, but I think that can also be a con in a way too, because what if you don't have that and you feel like I don't want to, it's reading on my phone, that kind of issue, but not as big as maybe it would fall under like a Hoopla con. But so now for the cons of Libby, there is quite a few, and I say that, just kidding. There's not quite a few. There's like 2 of them, but I do think they're big ones. So I guess that's kind of what I mean is there can be super long wait times for books. That's probably the biggest con, and that's why I guess I say where there's a lot, because that can be a real like deal breaker. I have seen crazy wait times for books. I think it actually, honestly, I think when I hear people talk about like Libby on like TikTok and stuff, that is their biggest complaint, is the wait times. And I can see that, especially if you're like me and you're in Illinois and you are seemingly sharing these titles and there's only like 6 copies available and you're trying to share it with the entire state of users. And with how popular reading has become, it is very hard to get your hands on these books and such. I remember there was a book that came out, and right when it came out, the wait time was like 6 months maybe. It was a very crazy long time, and so that does really, I think that does put people off. And maybe then that's a case of, okay, I'll go to an independent bookstore and I'll buy the book, or I'll pre-order the book from there just so I have it there or whatnot. Or I don't advise buying any digital copies of ebooks, because you're not buying them. That's not... You're just being you're given money and you're granted the right to read it, but then that can be ripped away at any time. I do think if it comes down to, I can't wait this long, go physically buy it. So it is a little frustrating. But then also, I guess that's why I also say, if you have the ability to use both these apps, check Hoopla. You never know. It could be on there and it could be very available. I've had that really happen when I think I was reading, it wasn't an Emily Henry book, but it was, I'm sorry, I have to Google this now. It was like a pretty popular title. Oh, Yes. Okay. I believe it was Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. Yes. Okay. So this was a pretty popular book at the time. This was about 2022. Second First Impressions by Sally Thorne. And I remember seeing I went to Libby to purchase it, or not purchase it, to borrow it. And it was like weeks and weeks of wait time. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I mean, I'll wait till it just, gets going or whatever. And then one day I'm scrolling on Hoopla just mindlessly and it was available. So there's a case to be made, but there is also a frustration that's super understandable. My other con for Libby is I think the design of it, the app, is a little clunky. I don't know. It's hard to explain. It feels a little confusing when you first get into it and you have all these buttons and then you see all these titles and you're trying to figure out the filtering system and you're trying to go here, go there, do that. Which also, speaking of the filtering system, I think it's pretty decent of a filtering system. It's not the greatest and not the absolute best, but it's a pretty decent filtering system. But it is hard to, I think, navigate, and there is a goal of being aesthetically pleasing and looking nice that I think then overshadows the userability in some sort of ways. So it feels a little clunky at times. It's not the end of the world though, but I think it can be a little confusing when you first start off and you're not certain on all these buttons, and there's all these buttons on the bottom and you just are you're not sure what you got to click to get back to the first page and that page and whatnot. So it does become a little overwhelming and a little frustrating, and sometimes I just don't want to bug with it at all. So that can be a little unfortunate, but it's definitely not the worst hurdle, and it is able to be overcome. And I think even this might be a case where using the browser version is a little bit easier, and from the browser version stuff, you can still send your Kindle and stuff and everything. So you may even feel like skipping the app and just completely going right on your laptop, but that's just a thought. So yeah, so those are my pros and cons of Libby, and when trying to use them, I understand both sides definitely. For Hoopla, though, I do have, I guess, definitely a little bit more pros and a little bit more cons in this situation. I think a big pro of Hoopla is the no wait time. So on the complete flip side of Libby, where you have that as such a long wait time and stuff, there is no wait time at Hoopla. It feels like stuff is truly on demand, which is kind of nice. And kind of when you realize more of how it kind of works and stuff, it is still kind of nice, and it's a good way to approach it. And I kind of like that kind of separates them from Libby, and it gives you a little bit of a different kind of library using experience. So there's no wait times. It's pretty nice. You get, I believe that's the one. No, okay. You don't get to choose how long you check out a book for on Hoopla. It is a standard, I think 20 days or something. Libby lets you choose. I think you can choose a week, 2 weeks, or 21 days. Hoopla, no, there's just a standard date, and it tells you right away when you're gonna return it. Also on Hoopla, I don't think you can use that little hack where you just turn on airplane mode and it doesn't go back. I could be wrong about that though. I guess if you're reading on your phone, it's a little harder. On your Kindle for Libby, I know people will turn on airplane mode so it doesn't take back the book. I'm not certain about that. I've never done that. I've never felt the need to do that, but I know people swear by that and stuff to read their books in time. But I don't think Hoopla really operates in the same way, so it will just kind of take it back, but you also then can pretty easily get it back, so I don't know. The Hoopla also then goes beyond books and magazines. You kind of heard as I explained it, they're very open about everything they have on there and the various different categories they have. It's a big kind of feature of their site that I really I enjoy and I like seeing. They have a also better filtering system, I think. They have I guess I should say strong advanced search. They have a pretty in-depth at search that I feel that Libby sometimes is really lacking. Theirs is definitely, I guess that makes theirs a little bit more user-friendly on Libby because it is more straightforward of tags and such and searches, whereas Hoopla really lets you get down to I think the ISBN number. You can get that deep. You can find publication dates. You can see authors here, genre, character, and it's all very specific. So I guess if you are more equipped on that, like, you know directly what you need kind of thing, Hoopla is a little bit better for that. But if you are someone who maybe you're not always into the filtering system and you're not super great at advanced searches, Libby might be a little bit more helpful in kind of helping with that and stuff. But it's still very good on Hoopla, and I think that it makes it a very big pro in this situation. But Hoopla also has a kids mode, which I think is pretty neat. I couldn't find anything like that on Libby, so I'm not sure if that's kind of on there, but I know Hoopla does it. I hope maybe Libby has something of the sorts, or it has like parental kind of things in ways. I'm not 100% sure how it works. I've never used it myself. I did try using it for this thing. But it looks like you just kind of turn on a kids mode. You just like click it and it turns on kids mode, and it shows like here popular audiobooks is like all of Harry Potter, or popular ebooks is like Diary of a Wimpy Kid, popular movies, Leap, Sonic the Hedgehog. So you can kind of see it does kind of filter in. I think of it as like Netflix's kids mode, where it'll just show curated content for a certain age group and such. I don't know if that works totally with laws and such regarding parents monitoring what children have at the library and stuff, but that's a whole other situation that would have to be explored at a different time. But I do like that. I still think it's a pro. I think that is interesting, and I think it's kind of a, it's kind of like YouTube Kids, or maybe even better than YouTube Kids, because I've heard a lot of shady stuff about YouTube Kids. So now those are the pros of Hoopla. Now, of course, then there are the cons. So there is not really a tagging system on Hoopla. So if you want to read something and you just got to favorite it and it goes to your favorites, there is no way of kind of being like, at least no way that I have been able to find. I don't think it goes that deep, but if someone else has been able to find it or something, please, of course, let me know. But it just seems it puts everything in favorites. It will separate it between, this is audiobooks you favorited, these are ebooks you favorited, these are comic books you favorited, these are series, volumes, collections that you favorited. So it does separate it that way, but you can't make a list of being like, this is my romance TBR. So I think maybe that could be a con, especially if you're someone who does like to divide it up and list out stuff like that. They do kind of also have a very funky selection. I think I mentioned this before, but the stuff on Hoopla is like, it's either really popular or really obscure. It seems like everything's on there, but then it also seems like maybe nothing's on there. It's a little funny. It definitely is good if you are just someone who just wants to just go look. You're just like, I just want to browse and see what could possibly populate on Hoopla that I could possibly read. I'll read anything. I just need to find something. And it's really fun then to explore, to see genres. They're very good at making like lists of stuff. So like kind of like oh, here's 10 books to read in the summer or something like that. I remember this is how I specifically found billionaire romances, which I am actually going to be covering in an upcoming episode about romance subgenres. But this was my introduction to billionaire romance because they just had a whole curated search page of people's billionaire romance stuff. So it is a place where I think definitely littler authors maybe get their stuff out here, or lesser known authors in that way. But then there's also very popular stuff. Like I said, like I just talked about Harry Potter, all the Harry Potter books are on here. The new Hunger Games one's on here. It's The Housemaid. I know a lot of people are reading that now. You can find at least the audiobook on here. I don't know if you can find the actual book on here, but you can find at least the audiobook. And also that is a common thing with Hoopla that I've noticed, is that there is sometimes a lot more audiobooks than there is of an actual book of something. But yeah, so it feels kind of super obscure. Even sometimes with the comics and stuff, it feels a little out there. Or television feels maybe a little funny. But that's not the end of the world. It is kind of fun, though. And it is honestly good, though, because then you don't know what you may find. And you may actually find exactly what you're looking for. It's really all interesting, really fun to explore. I will be honest. It's so much fun to explore. There seems to be a lot of, television is a lot of, British content, honestly, which I think is really interesting. Sorry, that's just a tangent of me just observing the homepage here of it, but yeah. So it is funky stuff. That could be a con to some people that it feels odd sometimes, so that's okay though. And then my last con for Hoopla is that it's only usable on your phone or computer. I've probably mentioned this a million times by now, so I won't mention it anymore. It's very good if you have a tablet. I think that's probably your best way to read, is if you have a little iPad or one of those Amazon Fire tablets or something like that. That's probably the best way, I think, to read, but it is also just phone or computer. It's not the end of the world. I am currently right now reading a book from Hoopla on my phone, which is really fun because I forgot how much I like that of just being able to carry my book anywhere with me kind of thing. But it's not the end of the world. Or if you're not comfortable reading like that, it could feel like the end of the world, but just something to observe. Maybe this also then influences you to get a tablet over a Kindle or something like that. So just keep that in mind. Now, as for kind of my last sort of overview of these apps, I wanted to go over some accessibility features. This is kind of varies in between, and what accessibility features the idea of that could also vary by person, but these are just some of the mainly the design and readable features that are offered on them. So on Libby, there are quite a few of them. It feels very accessible in various ways. You can reduce color variation, you can reduce text variation, reduce motion, vibrations, etc. You can always change when you're reading the color of the screen, font size. It has many of the features that you would find on your Kindle kind of already on there. And it feels like there's a ton of them. Honestly, when you start a book on Libby, just go through all the different accessibility features and just see what you can do. Try the different fonts, find what works best for you. You would be so amazed by what you're able to discover on there, and it's really cool. There is also, you can change timing and use keyboard shortcuts for easier access. That is definitely more of a on the desktop type of thing, but that's also available. And you can always you can change on audiobooks the speed, of course. You can change the speed. You can't change the narrator, unfortunately. Sometimes you are stuck with whoever read it, and sometimes that's a blessing or it's a curse, but you can do that. And then magazines also has some different little features to edit and change too. So there is a ton of accessibility features. It feels very accessible. Like I said, there is some visual, and then also with the reading stuff that I do recommend exploring. I love exploring the different ways to change my screen on these different apps, because I always find I switch up the font to make it feel fresh, or I change the size. I'll make it super big. Then I'm flipping through it so fast. So it is kind of fun to do, and there is a lot of them on there and stuff. And then on Hoopla, there feels there's a little bit less accessibility. If there is more accessibility, I unfortunately was not able to find it. So maybe there isn't as much accessibility, or it needs to be labeled perhaps a little bit better in the app. But mainly, the biggest accessibility feature is reduced to it's just reduced to changing the reading screen. So color, font size, etc. You can scroll, or you can on a web page, or you can flip a book. Those are kind of the main things. I don't know how well, I guess that's the thing. I don't know how well these platforms use for screen readers. Those I imagine maybe kind of well, because I think everything is HTML. However, I'm not 100% certain on that, so that may be perhaps an issue when trying to search. You don't maybe have a full understanding of what, if you're hovering over something, it might be is. don't think so, though, because when I do hover it, it does tell me, like, exactly, like, when I'm hovering it. So maybe if you are someone who uses that sort of technology, you're always welcome to let me know, like, what you are and, you know, what may be better or not, and I will absolutely add that in, credit your perspective on that. But Hoopla has, I feel, less accessibility features. It really does boil down to you can change the size font, the color, and whatnot. So, like I said, if there is more to the actual, like, app, such as, like, reducing text variation or color variation, no motion when you're opening stuff, I need to be pointed in the direction of that because I was not able to find it. So that may be an area for an improvement. I'm not sure, though. So those are the main, like, accessibility features and such. Overall, I utilize both of these apps across the board and whatnot. I kind of have talked about that. I use both because I think each have their gaps that then they each fill in one way or another. So they kind of do work kind of in tandem together, and I wonder if that's intentional or not. I don't know if they're aware of each other like that. Maybe they are. I'm not too certain on, like, what companies own them all and whatnot, but yeah, it is kind of cool. They fill, they don't, it's pretty neat. So I do like that. I do hope Hoopla is more, like, available elsewhere and whatnot and everything. So, because I don't hear a lot of people talk about it. So I always do worry, like, is it not available? It's like, is it not available or whatnot? So that'll, I guess, be interesting to find out if this comes out and everyone's like, I've never heard of this. What are you talking about? Maybe not, though. I hope that's kind of interesting, kind of cool. So yeah, so like I said, they kind of have gaps to fill each other, which is kind of nice. And unfortunately, I guess it is unfortunate that it can only be accessed through your library. I do hope maybe you have a library card and you can use them, so maybe that's not a downfall. But I do think these are pretty good apps that kind of, you know, they're good to work together and use and stuff. As I've said before, please don't use this as, like, a complete substitute for going in person to your library. Buy what you can from smaller bookshops. Don't fully rely on them. That is something actually I'm working on. I do try to buy small, especially if a new book's coming out that I want to pre-order. I don't do that super often, but when I do, I'm looking immediately to my local smaller bookshops, what's going on, what prices, how can I pre-order, because it does just feel like better in certain ways too. But I am mainly reliant on these. So I do kind of I feel like I have some knowledge on them and stuff. And if you, of course, have any, like, questions or you want, like, more talked about on something specific on either of these apps, please let me know. I love diving into these. Like I said, I use them all the time. So I'd love to hear, do you use them? How much do you use them? Do you want to know more about this? Do you have a question about this? Please try to let me know, and I will try to answer as best I can. If not, all these places have, I think, pretty decent FAQs, or at least descriptions of what they do, or help centers. They have contact us and all that. So, but yeah, so I hope this was interesting. I'm sorry, I do feel like I am a little rusty right now talking about this and everything, but I hope that all made sense, and I hope you have a better understanding of these two platforms, and I hope you do go out and use them. And like I said, if you got questions, follow-ups, whatnot, please let me know. I can always try to answer or make a follow-up episode or whatnot, and maybe break it down a little bit differently if needed or whatnot. So how many times can I say whatnot? Am I right? Anyways, thank you so much for listening. Love to hear from you in the comments. Anything, if you want to chit chat more about this, tell me your opinion. How do you use it all, and all that. Yeah, so thank you. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful day and keep on reading.